Shawn Baker says that the most efficient way proto-humans, early humans, got protein and calories was to take down a big, fatty, energy-fueled megafaunal animal. So when you talk about megafaunal, that's like 12,000 years ago, which is quite a long time ago. They have nibbled on the occasional fruit or nut, he admits, but the time and energy needed to get the same payoff would have been greater by at least an order of magnitude. So what does that mean? Picking all those calories would cost more calories than it takes when you eat an animal. It's one kill, lasts for a long time. So when they were looking at hunting these larger animals, they were being efficient in terms of diet. The Liver King himself came up with the pithiest tagline. And get this, why eat vegetables when you could eat testicles? Hello there, I'm Cardona of Elite Healers Sports Massage, and today we're going to be going through an article, and there's going to be two versions of this video. The first one's going to be for YouTube, that's going to be a little bit edited and a little bit safe, and then you're going to have the other one that I'll definitely be putting on Rumble and Odyssey. And the reason that we're going to be doing two different versions of this video is because we're going to be talking about something that I believe is good for the health. But anytime we're talking about health, there might be portions that YouTube just might not like because it might not be following a narrative. But if we can't have a discussion and kind of look at both sides of things, how are we ever supposed to make up our mind and grow? So we will be doing those two versions. But anyway, what I want to do is I want to look at this article from the New Yorker magazine. All right, so there's the New Yorker, and it's talking about, is an all-meat diet what nature intended? The Hyper-Carnivory movement conjures a time when men hunted and lunch was literally on the hoof. What does the research say? An article by Manveer Singh from September 25th, 2023. This is going to be fun. Let's get into it. In August 2021, a new shirtless figure appeared on Instagram and TikTok with a great shaggy beard and muscles the size and color of ripe pumpkins. He was part cowboy, part Conan the Barbarian. "I'm Brian Johnson," he said in a third Instagram video. "My family and tribe call me Liver King." He's the owner of Ancestral Supplements, which sells desiccated organ meat in capsule form, and he's a walking marketing campaign. Within 8 months, Liver King had amassed 1.5 million followers on Instagram and nearly 3 million on TikTok. He was mellow at first, but he embraced a new persona, growing crasser and more meme-worthy and less clothed. In March 2022, he said that the Liver King broke out of his cage and effing ate Brian Johnson. Most of the videos are centered on eating meat, lifting heavy stuff, and doing punishing unorthodox workouts. His body, he said, was all natural, not the product of steroids, but of exercise and eating animals. Wink, wink. The Liver King's premise, a familiar one by now, is that we're mismatched with the modern world. Many of our problems can be solved by reconnecting with long-lost ways. I don't necessarily disagree with that. He insists on his 9 ancestral tenets. These include reasonable suggestions like sleep, move, bond, but as he once explained, if I tell you all 9, you don't remember anything. Instead, he boiled his recommendations down to 1. I say, eat liver, because liver is king! The best-selling standalone product on AncestralSupplements.com is grass-fed beef liver. Now, if people remember Brian Johnson, that man, and probably still is, he's freaking nuts. But we all found out that he was on roids and kind of juicing up. So a lot of what he says and what he talks about, because he was playing that all-natural side and then it was exposed that he was on performance-enhancing drugs, kind of tosses everything he says out the window, especially when it comes to those who are looking to deny the benefits of eating meat, eating organs. But this man, he went a little bit crazier. He really grabbed his diet by the balls and started eating every organ, even those below the belt, if you know what I mean. So anyway, let's keep looking at this and let's see where this goes with this. All right. The craze for eating the way our ancestors did is nothing new. It's been more than 2 decades since the exercise physiologist Loren Cordain published the Paleo diet, Lose Weight and Get Healthy by Eating Foods You Were Designed to Eat in 2001, which helped launch a billion-dollar industry. That's some book launching a billion-dollar industry. But the Liver King, along with other meatfluencers, has pushed a paleo to the extreme of carnivory. They maintain that humans evolved to kill animals similar in size and constitution to domesticated cattle, to devour their organs, often raw, and to eat vegetables only in the most desperate of circumstances. I've put Liver King aside, put him in his own little box, and fill it full of liver and other organs so he could stay off to the side. But really, I've read articles that I'll go look for them and leave them in the links in the description. Articles that really do talk about how they would hunt these bigger animals and they would kill it, dry some of the meat, eat some of the meat, use the fur for clothes, and so they would use every ounce of the animal. And this is something that you can do before you start farming. So when we were more nomadic, moving from place to place with our tribe, we would definitely be hunting the animals, and one woolly mammoth, one large animal, is going to feed a tribe of people for days, if not weeks on end, depending on the size of the kill and the size of your tribe. So when they would do that, they would look at the organs as the most sacred. So that would be given to the alphas and to the leaders. Then you would look at the muscle meat, be given to everybody, and they would live off of that. And of course, they did eat stuff like tubers, potatoes, they would eat fruits, but the greeny plants, those weren't the things that they would eat. So they would still be having fruits, they would still have potatoes and other root stuff, but they would really stay away from the greens and would only use that to survive. Anyway, let's keep going on and let's look at this, but it's totally true what they say. It's just that you get clowns like the Liver King kind of messing up the good message just to make a grift and make a lot of money. All right, so forget the leaves and fibrous tubers. We're going hunting. Paul Saladino on Instagram with 1.6 million followers writes in his book, The Carnivore Code. Now, Paul Saladino, that's a guy worth following over there. I follow him on a few different things, and I watch his stuff and I read his books. The Carnivore Code, his book, is the closest thing this new movement has to manifesto. Now, would you call it a new movement, eating meat when it was one of our first food sources? I mean, if you look at it against like cornflakes or something like that, was made by Kellogg. Which one's a new diet? It's the cornflakes. It's not meat. So I don't know what this is about, meat movement. He asserts that this approach appears to be exactly what our ancestors did, which there's a lot of evidence for. Saladino owns a supplement company called Heart and Soil with the Liver King, so they're tied in financially together. I didn't know that, actually. According to the Carnivore Code, plants are poison. They don't want to be eaten and have, as a result, evolved defense chemicals designed to disrupt your digestion. Likewise, in the Carnivore Diet by Shawn Baker, Instagram, he has 319,000 followers. Shawn Baker is another awesome one to read his books, watch his content, and follow along with. He is a genius, and some of his stuff on Twitter is actually very inspiring. So, Shawn Baker says that the most efficient way proto-humans, early humans, got protein and calories was to take down a big, fatty, energy-fueled megafaunal animal. So, when you talk about megafaunal, that's like 12,000 years ago, which is quite a long time ago. They have nibbled on the occasional fruit or nut, he admits, but the time and energy needed to get the same payoff would have been greater by at least an order of magnitude. So what does that mean? Picking all those calories would cost more calories than it takes when you eat an animal. It's one kill, lasts for a long time. So when they were looking at hunting these larger animals, they were being efficient in terms of diet. The Liver King himself came up with the pithiest tagline. And get this, why eat vegetables when you could eat testicles? Okay.
Most testicles ever eaten in one day! Let's get this party started!
The notion of meat-loving ancestor has a history. Raymond Dart in the 1950s was known for first discovering authentic fossil of an early African hominin in what became known as the killer ape theory. Hunting Dart thought made us human. Our furry forebears climbed down from the trees to gorge on more attractive, fleshy food that lay in the savannas of the southern plains, he wrote in the book Adventures with the Missing Link in 1959. Elsewhere, he described the earliest hominins as confirmed killers, carnivorous creatures that seized their quarries by violence, battered them to death, tore apart their broken bodies, dismembered them from limb, shackling the ravenous thirst with the hot blood of victims and greedily devouring livid, writhing flesh. Wow! that was quite a description. But yeah, the killer ape theory seeped into the mainstream in 1955. Dart, based at the University of Witwatersrand, met the playwright Robert Audrey, who's in South Africa reporting for a trip. Let's see. Let's go down. He was convinced that this predatory transition not only made us human, but also explained as what he described man's bloody history, his eternal aggression, his irrational, self-destroying, inexorable pursuit of death for death's sake. Audrey was inspired to write the Nature of Man series, a set of books about human nature and evolution, published between 1961 and 1976. Time, later named African Genesis, the first of a series of most notable non-fiction books of the 60s. It was cited as an influence on Stanley Kubrick's film 2001, A Space Odyssey in 1968. So, where he showed the primates turning to violence. Alright, this kind of, let's go down a little bit. If you want to read the whole thing, I'll also leave the link to this article in the description. I just want to get ahead of it because that's a lot of dramatic stuff. Let's skip their whole story. Alright, so.
One eternity later.
Rebecca Wragg Sykes covers in vivid detail in Kindred, Neanderthal Life, Love, Death, and Art. Neanderthals certainly ate big beasts. Sites are filled with bones of butchered bison and red deer. There are even indications that they took down mammoths. Yet Neanderthals living in warm, wet environs, tooth wear patterns similar to those of agricultural people who eat lots of fibrous plants. Further evidence has come from investigating Neanderthals' dental calculus, that is, from probing their plaque. Also, they looked at their plaque in their teeth to see what they ate. Fascinating. Shortly before he died, an individual known as Shanidar III consumed dates, a lentil-like plant, and identified tuber root. The remains of two adults found in Belgium had traces of grasses and water lily root starches, suggesting that they had foraged plant food. A sample from El Cedron in Spain had no large mammal DNA, but it turned up matches for pine, mushroom, and moss. Moss. Scattered morsels of prehistoric diets reveal an enduring taste for veggies. So while they ate a lot of meat, they did have vegetables. Vegetables burned through faster, so they weren't satiated nearly as long by eating vegetables. No controlled studies have been published that validate the extravagant health claims made for the carnivore diet, but the meat influencers are undeterred. In the carnivore diet, Shawn Baker lists eczema, depression, and fibromyalgia as ailments that seem to respond positively to the carnivore diet. The psychologist Jordan Peterson claims that a regimen of beef, salt, and water sharpened his thinking, cleared up his psoriasis, and eliminated his gun disease. And his daughter Michaela Peterson insists that the same diet, supplemented with lamb, bison, and the occasional vodka or bourbon, cured her arthritis. Now that's one way of doing that diet. It's realistic. I prefer a little coffee of my carnivore lifestyle, but a little whiskey or vodka, I'll agree with the young Peterson. Moderately. Make sure it's always moderately. All right, so in The Complete Carnivore Diet for Beginners, your practical guide to an all-meat lifestyle by Judy Cho on IG, almost with 100,000 followers, Carnivory is presented as an all-powerful remedy with potential for alleviating depression, inflammation, eating disorders, and autoimmune issues. Now, there's a number of reasons that this happens, but I'll reveal one thing about my diet personally. I did try carnivore for a while, but I'm more animal-based. And one of the things that I've noticed is, just like Jordan Peterson, looking at just switching your diet to beef, organs. He had salt, water. These all sharpened the thinking. I still had chicken, and occasionally I had pork. And one of the things with all that is I did notice an improvement in my diet. In fact, when I had switched initially into carnivore, one of the things is after about 2 weeks of eating organs and eating carnivore, some of the people I work with were like, Adam, you have more energy. You seem more vibrant. And that was one of the first signs that I noticed that it was working for me. Also, I've leaned out a whole bunch. I was always, post-pandemic, I was floating around 13, 12% body fat. I had a little bit of depression that happened because of the challenges. And, you know, you let yourself go a little bit. So there was some fat that I just couldn't shed for like about those 2.5 years. You know, I stayed at that uncomfortable 12% body fat. And ever since I started Carnivore earlier this year, I've dropped right down into the single digits of body fat. Now, just like the young Peterson, what was her name? Michaela Peterson. I too do have the occasional vodka or the occasional whiskey, but still in moderation. And I've managed to slim down a whole bunch. I'd imagine that I would slim down even more and have even greater energy, but I can't live without coffee. Coffee is just one of those things that's a big treat. Also, being of Latino background, it's just in my blood. I can have it sometimes. I know some of you can be like, oh, it's bad, but sometimes I have it 3-4 times a day, and 1 or 2 cups might actually even be decaffeinated because I enjoy the flavor. So there are certain things you just don't want to give up. Another reason I became more animal-based, which means you can have fruits and little things like that instead of just being pure meat. I enjoy some orange juice too. I mean, orange juice goes good with vodka, but that's another story for another day. But let's continue on. All right, so where were we? Living off flesh alone is not easy, though, and Cho lays out suggestions for how to survive. Too much lean protein can cause problems, so make sure at least 70% of your calories come from fat. Too little mastication, not enough chewing, can lead to constipation. So try to chew each piece of meat 20 to 30 times. Carnivore tend to have messed up thirst cues, so drink more often than might actually feel natural. If you don't like meat, stop snacking until you're so hungry. If you don't like meat, stop snacking until you're so hungry that it becomes appealing. So that's one way to get yourself to eat more meat. Just starve yourself until you're ready to just scarf it down. To ease the transition, Cho offers various week-long meal plans along with helpful tables of permissible items and nutritional statistics. Now, I actually haven't looked at her Instagram. Judy Cho is one of them that I actually don't follow on Instagram or anywhere, so I'm going to have to follow her. But one thing that she does say about the carnivore diet that's actually really important is you can't just have meat, because protein is not an energy source. You have carbohydrates that are an energy source, and you have fats that can work as an energy source. Now, fats don't get used as energy unless you've depleted the carbs in your system or you have no carbs in your system, hence why you don't eat any carbs and you have more fat. Because when you're chewing right and you're eating meat and then you have the fat, so that could be like, you know, the fat from beef. It could be from butter. It could be from cheese. All of these things work to provide that energy source that you need. So you might think, oh, I need my breakfast muffin or something like that in the morning. No, you don't. That's just an old habit. And I know habits are hard to break. And I'll tell you from experience, when I was actually getting into the carnivore animal-based diet, I did have moments of withdrawal where I'd be like, oh my God, I need a pizza, I need a carb, I need some pasta. But that goes away. That's like 2-3 weeks, and it's not constant. It comes and it goes. But the body, like anything else, the body's made to adapt. So the more challenges we present, there's that suffering period. But anything that's worth it has the price of suffering. So that is how you adapt, and if you're eating fats, you're going to have all the energy you need. Now let's continue on. Some meatfluencers stress that human beings are animals and maintain that if allowed to eat according to our animal instincts, we will favor a meaty menu. But biologists David Rabner and Stephen J. Simpson have been investigating the animal alimentation for more than 30 years, and their new book, Eat Like the Animals, suggests that meatfluencers have it all wrong. Now, I don't know if I'm going to be able to actually look at the word meatfluencer ever in my life and be able to say it with a straight face, because that's just too funny. The authors started collaborating at Oxford, studying the eating preferences of locust grasshoppers, basically, and they found out locusts prefer a certain ratio of carbohydrates to protein. When forced to live on foods higher in carbs and lower in protein, the insects ate a lot, became obese, and took longer to become adults. So they were like having pizza and drinking Mountain Dew and being lazy in their basement, never becoming adults. Sounds familiar. Conversely, When put on the insect version of the Atkins diet, they ate far fewer calories and were less likely to make it to adulthood. That's caloric restriction. Second, they found that the locusts with a decent food selection always ended up with near identical ratios of protein and carbohydrates. It's as if, regardless whether we're offered meat, pasta, egg, bread, beans, rice, fish, potatoes, we've always consumed the exact balance of protein and carbs. The critters somehow track the nutrients which are in foods. These findings, they aren't limited to insects. They've determined that this pattern is widespread throughout the animal kingdom and found that protein-loaded diets don't just age animals, it kills them faster. Our sexy lean mice who ate high-protein, low-carb diets were the shortest-lived of all. They made great middle-aged looking corpses. Now, I've read other studies that say otherwise, so this is just looking at one study. When we look at one study like that, it's not necessary that it's going to be true. This is why you have to look at a meta-analysis, something that looks at a number of studies, because one or two studies can be altered just to kind of show the results that they want. Robbenheimer and Simpson, they also find possible lessons. As ultra-processed foods become stripped of protein, we behave like the protein-deprived locust, becoming bloated on carbs. So this is like looking at all that Burger King burgers, McDonald's burgers. Those are going to act more like carbs in the body. So you want to minimize the processed food. The elimination of fiber exacerbates the problem, they write, removing a break that would otherwise slow our eating, fill our stomachs, and curb hunger. Now, I've read a lot about dietary fiber and how you don't necessarily need dietary fiber, but there is a point to be made that you need dietary fiber when you're eating a lot of carbs. All right. At the same time, their work implies a Faustian allure to keto, carnivore, and other protein-heavy regimens. Cutting out carbs may make us skinnier and accelerate tissue development, shifting our bodies to a growth and reproduction pathway. But this comes at the expense of longevity. So we got to reproduce, we got to be stronger, and we grow more, but we don't live as long? We grow more, but we don't live as long? Something doesn't sound right with that. Repair and maintenance systems are often sidelined. Misfolded proteins and other cellular junk accumulate. Pushing overdrive, the body falters. So they act like you are building up toxins in there. But we all know that the way you get rid of toxins and get rid of stuff is through fasting. Fasting is very valuable unto itself. So I'm beginning to question the validity of this. It looks very biased. All right, so let's see. Two kinetically healthy populations, the Okinawans in Japan and the trisomy of Bolivia and Amazon, have the lowest incidence of cardiovascular disease ever recorded. Consume diets that are just 9 and 14% protein. Most of their calories comes from fibrous starches such as plants, cassava, or sweet potato. Robbenheimer and Simpson don't propose that readers become Japanese islanders or remote Amazonians, though they suggested protein intakes. They warn against following them too strictly. So they warn and advise against cutting out ultra-processed foods, finding good sources of fats, protein, fiber-loaded carbs. Listen to your appetite. Our appetites are better gaugers than our calculators. Now here I'm going to disagree. I'm going to wholeheartedly disagree with this one because they say that they're healthy populations, but when you look at the Japanese and you look at the Amazonian population and you compare them to other humans, while they have low protein intake, they're also a lot smaller than the average human, and that's common right there. So there is something to be said about lack of protein preventing the proper developmental processes from happening. Because one of the things, there's plenty of studies out there that have shown that when we were simians, when we were more monkey, before we became Homo sapiens, we didn't have as big brains. But finally, when we made it to the ground, we started hunting, and about the time we ate meat, the records show that our brain cavity actually grew in size. So we were just built to actually hunt, and we thought better because we had the meat in our diet. So I don't know if cutting down protein, I don't know if I want to be small, defenseless, and not as intelligent. So there's something to say about that, even if it's supposedly healthier. Also depends on what you mean by healthy. Are you really trying to make us smaller or to make us dumber for whatever reason while you eat the meat? I don't know. So sometimes you got to question this, especially the world that we see it's changing around us. You must always do your own research, even if they call you a conspiracy theorist or a whack job or something. Always do your own research. So that way you could come to your best conclusions. Read one thing, be like, okay, this is what they're saying here. Let me read some other sources. Now let me see, is there bias? Sometimes you can see in how they write that they're actually biased. But let's go on. Let me not get lost on a tangent. Is it possible meat influencers are a muscly manifestation of a larger awareness that our food system is failing us? In Eating to Extinction by Dan Saladino, who's not related to Paul Saladino, considers what the past can teach us about how to inhabit the world now and in the future. So Taras Grescoe's The Lost Supper argues that when it comes to plants and animals, we've subsisted for generations. Alright, so Greco and Saladino says the crisis of modernity is not as many meatfluencers exist. It's an excess of seed oils, totally agree, carbohydrates, and plant defense chemicals, but a collapse of diversity. Grescoe takes to the reader a 23,000-year-old site in eastern Africa where foragers once feasted on 20 species of mammal, 16 families of bird, and nearly 150 kinds of nuts, seeds, fruits, and legumes. So yeah, that is pretty diverse. He transfers to, I can't pronounce it, a bustling Neolithic settlement in Anatolia, where the fare included sheep, goats, wild cattle, wild boars, waterfowl, and an impressive array of plants. It may look as our modern diets are wonderfully varied, but by historical standards, they're not. Okay, that is one thing you could say and make an argument for, but again, you're looking at all this, and this is thinking about it as in an agricultural society, but there was plenty of years before we were agriculture, and when are you going to eat the plants? Year long. Plants are in season, they're seasonal. Animals are always around. So it was made more sense to, have your diet when there's no agriculture based around the animals, because the plants aren't always going to be there. So yes, I see their point, but I think they're only looking at a certain period of history. Let's go on. The loss of diversity is a call to arms. No meat required. The cultural history and culinary future of plant-based eating. Elisa Kennedy says that campaigns against ingesting flesh are about claiming biodiversity and rebuilding the food system in a way that supports culture, tradition, and gastronomy. Their argument comes down to an ecological observation. It takes about 100 times more lamb to produce a calorie of lamb and beef than it does a plant-based alternative. Oh, no. There's plenty out there showing that when you're growing all these plants, you're feeding the animals as well. And then a lot of people, they wind up, the farmers, when you have to grow your soy fields, they kill all the squirrels, all the mice, all the birds, all the animals that are competing for those greens. And what do they do with the bodies? They're not reused. So you're actually killing way more animals through growing crops and killing off all the animals. So it actually makes more sense, and there's plenty of studies that prove it's more sustainable to have a field of cows than a field of soy. Besides, having the cows doesn't mess with your hormones like the way soy does. So how do members of the carnivore crew respond? Some, like Judy Chow and Paul Saladino, argue that their consensus is wrong. It's not arguing. It is wrong. Cows may be the way to save the planet. They blamed environmental devastation on such factors as grain monocultures and crop-driven deforestation. Never mind that some 80% of farmland is used for livestock feed. Others take up vaporously ideological form of opposition. So you see, this article, it's already slanted against carnivores and meat eaters, which is why I do have to provide some of the context. But any one of these people that they're quoting, from Paul Saladino, Shawn Baker, I'm sure Judy Chow, they're going to have the resources, they're going to have the links and the studies that a biased article like the New Yorker is not going to have. Consider the streak of the Raw Egg Nationalist on Twitter, X, 182,000 followers. Oh, God. So they call him a conspiracy theorist who dispenses red pill fitness to his fans. That's something else for another day. Red pill fitness? Fitness is fitness. There's no politics behind fitness. If someone's telling you that, I'm pretty sure they want you to be weaker. The enemy today is what I like to call soy globalism, he explained in Tucker Carlson's 2022 Fox special, The End of Men. His solution aligned at nationalism and masculinity. Strong men build strong nations, which defend against soy globalism. And that's where raw eggs come in. Eggs are a superfood, packed with protein, fats, minerals, anabolic cholesterol, the exact opposite of the disgusting rubbish the globalists want us to eat. He didn't end at eggs. If it has cholesterol, it qualifies. That means butter. That means red meat, organ meat, eating liver, drinking raw milk, eating raw products. He warned, eating a low-fat vegetarian diet is about the worst thing you can do. It just tanks the testosterone. And this is partially why when you're eating meat, especially red meat, you build muscle. Testosterone builds muscle. So by eating foods that support testosterone building, you're really going to be able to grow that muscle. So guys, you're trying to grow testosterone, you're trying to grow muscles, eat the meat. Don't eat the soy. There's a whole bunch of problems with soy, but it will actually decrease your testosterone over long-term use. That's why there's soy boys. You don't hear soy men. You only hear soy boys, right? I am boy. Anyway, let's continue to look at the New Yorker. In December 2022, after emails were shared online, Liver King confessed he lied. Bare-chested, he told everyone that he did steroids and defended himself by returning to the issues that inspired him to preach the ancestral tenets. Our people are hurting at record rates with depression, autoimmune anxiety, infertility, low ambition in life. Our young men are hurting most, feeling lost, weak, and submissive. That's something that I can agree with the Liver King. We really do need to care for our men. Our men, a lot of us are disposable. And so we have to do stuff to kind of help reduce depression, help other issues, increase our ambitions in life, eat meat, improve your testosterone. Pour over materials on Carnivore and the overwhelming impression that men are endangered. They were once strong. They lived with nature and had stone-hard chests. They were killed or killed, but not anymore. Now they're either scrawny or obese. They have plummeting sperm counts and middling testosterone levels. Alexander the Great conquered the world at age 25, posted Carnivore Aurelius, an anonymous meme maker who dances between satire and sincerity. I like Carnivore Aurelius. Follow him. The average 25-year-old today has a panic attack if they leave their vape at home. WTF happened to men? I agree. Oh, you can't have a panic attack. You gotta be a man. Man up a little bit, okay? Men, we more and more are falling behind. Just 74 men finish college for every 100 women. The model of a provider who supports family, though through mostly physical labor, is a diminishing prospect. Because meat is linked to manhood, Carnivore promises a way to pump up a shriveled birthright. The Liver King understood this from the start. His first video was ostensibly about Paleolithic life, but it looked like an ad for masculinity. It starred a semi-nude Viking hurling a spear, throwing a heavy ball, benching a barbell, thick chains hanging down. It featured lighting, a bonfire, raw meat slice with a chef's knife, and a marinated lamb chop thrown on a grill. These were symbols of status and wealth, from the landscaping to the lavishing home gym. Carnivore conjures up an Edenic past that contrasts with our current discontents, a mythical time where men were manly and bodies were fit and food was real and natural. Cleanse yourself of modern corruption. It urges, and the world and your body will be renewed. You will be strong. Your family will be healthy. The land will recover. In the Carnivore Code, Paul Saladino describes the zone you inhabit when consuming a meat-only diet as the Zion, Shangri-La, and the Promised Land, where you can hunt healthy ruminants drinking from clean flowing streams. In familiar terrain, the most successful diets of the past half-century benefited from similar marketing. Alluring additives are poisoning our bodies, the advocates insisted. Freedom and vigor come from purging them, reenacting the lifeways of our ancestors. When, in the 1970s, Nathan Pricken championed a high-carbohydrate, low-fat regimen, and his authors claimed that it was an accident of civilization that Americans had such easy access to fat and cholesterol. Primitive people were most likely to be near vegetarians, he asserted. When Robert Atkins promoted the opposite approach, carbohydrate restriction is the key to good health, he stressed that the food you eat when you do Atkins is surprisingly close to what our primitive ancestors ate. So, if you look at the bodies, just to kind of debunk this simply and real quick, but if you look at the bodies of vegetarians, I mean, for example, look at Robert Downey Jr., who went from Iron Man to Iron Deficiency Man. When you look at people who follow a vegan diet for a while, or that lady that lived off of juices until she died, they become frail, they become thinner. So primitive people being near vegetarians is totally illogical based on the concept that how are you supposed to hunt these large animals? How are you supposed to defend against predators, create a home, create a fire when you're in cold environments. You can't do that if you're weak and deficient off of vegetarian and veganism. So it just kind of, looking at that, just goes totally against the point that Nathan Prickin was trying to make. Fad diets are perfectly manufactured to spread. They appeal to dissatisfaction. They provide crude explanations why things are going wrong. They tap into an intuitive logic at the center of spiritual traditions, that the greater the sacrifice, the greater the redemption. Yet fad diets also doom themselves. The same feature that fueled their popularity, the quick fix nature, their severe and often harmful restrictions, is what makes them unsustainable for many. You'll see this happening within the culture of carnivory. When Joe Rogan went on a carnivore diet in 2022, he ate his fruit with meat. The Liver King espouses a nutrient-dense, nose-to-tail diet while openly consuming potatoes and maple syrup. Yet the most dramatic turnabout occurred when Paul Saladino himself, publishing the Carnivore Code, has acknowledged the benefit of carbohydrates. Now he incorporates fruit, honey, and kefir into his daily fare. And this spring he changed his social media from Carnivore MD to Paul Saladino MV. If this in true Paleolithic fashion, even the meatfluencers struggle to resist the pull of plants. Okay, so again, the New Yorker's being biased here, because if you look, they say Paul Saladino went to plants, but then they list fruit, honey, and kefir. I mean, I have some right here. I actually really like it, but that's fermented milk. That is not a plant. It might be made from something that eats plants, but it's not a plant. Right? That's my favorite version of plant-based meat. Give the cow the plant, eat the cow. So when we're looking at this, honey, that's bee vomit. That's not a plant. Now fruit, yes, that's part of the plant, but that's the sweet part, the part that's meant to be eaten. You eat that, you get the seeds in you too. Like let's say you eat apple, some of the seeds go in, watermelon, some of the seeds go in, they go into your poop, and you release that. And then it's like fertilizer with the seed, allowing new fruits to grow. There's a point to that. It doesn't have the defense chemicals that the green part of the plant actually has. So that's actually something that you could consume and it not go against what we were talking about. Sure, you can have these carbohydrates, but honey is not a plant. Kefir is not a plant. It's closer to milk than it is anything else. So when you look at that, this is what's called animal-based. You can have fruits and animal-based, but the New Yorker doesn't even mention that. The New Yorker wants to talk about it like it's not the truth. So, I mean, this is kind of a little sad. And this is what I mean by looking at these biased articles like this. You need to look at a whole bunch of different sources. And when they tell you, someone's mistaken or they're dumb and they're, pretty much almost close to like slandering and libeling them, as close as it could be. I'm not a lawyer, but it's getting close. When you look at that, you need to look at the other sources. You need to go to the people that they're trying to shame, that they're trying to say don't look at it. Because sometimes the best way for a person to win the argument is if they prevent you from hearing the other person's side. It's a whole nother thing. But one thing I'll tell you, when looking at this article, it's a good article. I have to say, I'm actually kind of glad that though this article was biased, it is opening up to having the conversation be a little more broad. I've personally seen the value of a carnivore diet and the value of an animal-based diet. I personally keep animal-based, but still make space for coffee and the occasional whiskey every so often. But if you don't do things in moderation, you're not going to be able to keep strong and true. So that is my feelings on this. And we're going to go more into it in a future video, because one of the things I want to do is then talk about meat and how having high protein in your diet helps with athletic recovery. And that's how we're tying this all in, is because this is Elite Healer Sports Massage and we're all about proper recovery. And it's not just about massage, getting the knots out, but if you need a massage in New York City, you go to EliteHealerSportsMassage.com and you schedule with us. But there's other things to be done, like the amount of sleep, which I made a great video on the value of sleep for athletes. And now I'm going to be looking at meat and protein and how this also helps with recovery, which helps you win the game, helps you push yourself further and achieve new heights. So if that's something you want to do, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with a friend that you want on your team competing with you by your side. And if you want to watch more, watch this video over here or this one over here, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.